The House will come to order. All in the chamber and galleries, please rise and join us today in a prayer by the gentleman from Newton.
Let's bow for prayer. Father, we pause today for a moment to recognize we need your help to accomplish anything good. And it is in your word we find what is good and what exactly you require of us, where you admonished us to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. So today, give us the wisdom and strength to pursue your purpose for us, to behave justly in all we do, to prioritize mercy in our interactions with others, and to walk in humility so that we may glorify you and serve the people with excellence. As we delve into the business of the day, grant us a resolve to always seek truth as the foundation of every policy. Guide us not by emotion, but by principle. Let our deliberation be so that there may be concession without coercion and conciliation without compromise. Give us grace that we may fulfill the task you have set before us with the utmost civility and respect, for we know that is your desire. Challenge us to put aside any selfish ambition or motive and keep focus on what is best for the people we serve, so that our conscience may be clear, knowing our course was pure. Lord, lift our hearts and our spirits to be in accordance with your perfect will and draw us nearer to you this day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please remain standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to gentleman from St. Louis County.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move for the approval for the House Journal for the sixth day, Thursday, January the 13th, 2022, and I ask for a roll call vote.
The gentleman from St. Louis County has moved for the approval of the House Journal for the sixth day, Thursday, January 13th, 2022. Are there any additions or subtractions to the journal? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the journal vote yes. All those opposed vote no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 140 yes, 0 no, and 3 present, you have approved the gentleman's motion. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next order of business will be the approval of the House Journal for the 7th day, Friday, January the 14th, 2022.
The gentleman from St. Louis County has moved for the approval of the House Journal for the 7th day, Friday, January 14th, 2022. Are there any additions or subtractions to the journal? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the House Journal will vote yes. All those opposed vote no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 139 yes, 3 present, you have approved the gentleman's motion. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next order of business will be first reading of House bills and House joint resolutions.
Mr. Clerk, please read the House bills and House joint resolutions.
House Joint Resolution Number 120, an act relating to motor vehicle fuel tax, introduced by Meredith. House Bill Number 2453, introduced by McDaniel, an act relating to bridge and highway designations. And House Bill Number 2454, introduced by Murphy, an act relating to political subdivisions with penalty provisions.
Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next order of business will be points of personal privilege, and I ask that you recognize the lady from St. Louis City.
Points of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On January 13th, a 911 call was made in the city of St. Louis. The call was for a fire in a vacant, abandoned property next to a home that was occupied. The fire department did what the fire department always does. They headed to the fire knowing that there were people whose lives were in danger. Unfortunately, when the firefighters entered this vacant property, the structure was in such dire condition that the actual floor collapsed on 2 firefighters. The one firefighter was taken to the hospital. The other firefighter was taken out in somber silence with a blanket draped over his lifeless body. Before I ask for a moment of silence, I need you to know the City of St. Louis Fire Department lost firefighter Benjamin Polson in the line of duty. Firefighter Polson was from the community I represent. He went to St. Raphael's Grade School, where his mother currently teaches, and then on to St. John the Vianney High School. He was a Missouri State alumni, and he earned a law degree from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. However, he decided to follow in his father's footsteps, retired Fire Captain James Polson. And he joined the St. Louis Fire Department in 2019. He was assigned to Hamilton Heights Firehouse and was a member of the International Association of Firefighters, Local 73. It is with a very heavy heart for both the Polson family and the firefighter family that I ask you, Mr. Speaker, if we can have a moment of silence.
Could everyone please stand and join us in a moment of silence? Thank you, lady. Further points of personal privilege. Gentleman from St. Charles County.
Point of personal privilege, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you may know, I am Jewish. What you may not know is that my wife and my daughters are Catholic. This past Sunday, I went with them to church to attend services. I'm there to support them, and mostly I just sit there in silent reflection. During this service on Sunday, I thought about the events the previous day in Colleyville, Texas, where several Jews getting ready to celebrate the Sabbath, the holy day of rest, were held hostage for many hours. While I was sitting there thinking about all the different ways that event could have gone, the first reading started. It was from Isaiah chapter 62, verses 1 through 5. And that reading begins, "For Zion's sake, I will not be silent. For Jerusalem's sake, I will not be quiet." Over the interim, I heard from many different Jewish people. They are scared. Some are scared to attend services in their own temples. Some are scared to wear their kippot and show the world that they are Jewish. They are scared of what others may do to them simply for being Jewish. I recently learned of a very startling statistic. Despite being only 2% of this nation's population, 54.9% of all religiously biased crimes in 2020 were against Jewish people. Baruch Hashem, thank God, the situation ended in Colleyville with no innocent lives lost. It could have been very different. It could have been like Monsey, New York, or Jersey City, New Jersey, or Poway, California, or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or Overland Park, Kansas. As a result of the disproportionate amount of hate and violence targeted at Jews, we must have extra security at our temples and synagogues. Our temples, our churches, our mosques, all of our places of worship should be sanctuaries, not fortresses or crime scenes. I will not be silent. I will not be quiet. Standing here on this floor, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity that I have here, that my lone solitary voice can be amplified, not just to the great state of Missouri, but also to the nation and perhaps even the world. Yesterday, we celebrated the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, and I can think of no better words for me to share here than this. Our lives begin to end when we become silent about things that matter. To my colleagues here in the chamber, and to anyone listening to this message, reach out to your Jewish friends. Ask them if they are okay. Ask them what you can do to help. Because again, I will not be silent. I will not be quiet. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further points of personal privilege. Gentleman from Jackson.
Point of personal privilege, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Two men who were influential in my life passed away this weekend. Today, my family said goodbye to my uncle, Nobuyoshi Kobayashi. My uncle was a very good man. I learned a lot about people from my uncle. Through his example, he showed me how to love and accept people irregardless of the color of your skin or your national origin. We were not the same color, nor did we speak the same language. We didn't even live in the same country, but we understood each other. Our love for each other was mutual, but most importantly, we were family. My uncle, or in Japanese as we would say, my ochan, was what we would call an otokomaye. In English, otokomaye simply means good guy. Uncle Nobuyoshi, you were an otokomaye. The other gentleman in my life was my neighbor for over 30 years. His name was Charles McGee. He was a legendary Tuskegee Airman. General McGee was 102 years old and passed away peacefully in his sleep this past Sunday. He flew 409 fighter missions during World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. I'm especially proud of that because my father was a veteran of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. After retiring from the Air Force, Colonel McGee, or at the time he was Colonel McGee, managed the downtown Kansas City airport. Upon turning 100 years old, President Donald Trump promoted Colonel McGee to the rank of Brigadier General. He leaves behind 3 children, 10 grandchildren, and 14 great-grandchildren. Mr. Speaker, in honor of these 2 great men, I would like to ask for a moment of silence.
Could everyone please stand and join us in a moment of silence? Thank you, gentlemen. Further points of personal privilege. Gentleman from Morgan.
Point of personal privilege, please, Mr.
Proceed,
Speaker.
gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is with great sadness I report the passing of Ruth Charleston of Eldon. Ruth was the mother of Cheryl Wood and the mother-in-law of the previous gentleman from Morgan, former Representative David Wood. She was a pillar of our community and a leader in her church. She will be greatly missed. Mr. Speaker, I ask for a moment of silence in memory of Ruth Charleston.
Could everyone please stand and join us in a moment of silence? Thank you, gentlemen. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next order of business will be introduction of special guests, and I ask that you recognize the gentleman from Taney.
Introduction of special guests. Gentleman from Krypton, Taney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking from my new microphone at my new desk, I would like to introduce some very special guests. To my right, your left, between the second and third pillars, we once again have my wife, Valerie, as I introduced last year, but for the first time in this house, I would like to welcome back to the House my son, Daniel Seitz, who served as a legislative assistant here in 2017 and now serves as the communications director for the House Republican Caucus in Oklahoma. I'd also like to welcome for the first time my daughter-in-law, Stella. She's a charge nurse at a labor and delivery hospital. And by the way of Krypton, their son, and my first super grandson, Kal-El Brian Seitz. Please make them feel welcome.
Welcome to the House. Further introduction of special guests. Seeing none, gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the next order of business will be House Bills for Perfection, and I ask that you recognize the gentleman from Jefferson for a motion on House Committee substitute for House Bill 2117.
Gentleman from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Bill 2117 be ordered perfected and printed.
The gentleman from Jefferson has moved for the perfection and printing of House Bill 2117. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Committee substitute for House Bill 2117 be adopted.
The gentleman from Jefferson has moved for the adoption of House Committee substitute for House Bill 2117. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I further move that the title of House Committee substitute for House Bill 2117 be agreed to.
The gentleman from Jefferson has moved that the title for House Committee substitute House Bill 2117 be agreed to. Discussion on the title. Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the title will signify by saying aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You have approved the title. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe I need to allocate amount of time since this is going to be time debate. So I would allocate 10 minutes to myself to start. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 2117 is the congressional redistricting bill for this year, for this decade, for this census. What I'd like to do first is go over the process, and then I'll allow the ranking member of the committee to speak as well. Then we'll come back and speak specifically about the bill. But many of you have probably read some things about the bill, about the process. Well, I'm going to try to give you a snapshot of where we're at on this process. This bill is like any other bill. It goes through the committee process. This bill had a hearing. It was exec out 8-3. There was amendments offered in committee, and there was amendments that were passed in committee. Thus, we have a House Committee substitute. It went to the Rules Committee, passed out of there by a vote of 8-4. And here we are today on the floor, starting 4 hours of time debate. But as we step back a bit, let's talk about what we currently have on our congressional map. We had 8 congressional districts awarded to us in 2010 with a state population of 5.9 million. In 2010, 2011, when the maps were passed, the congressional districts had a population allocation of 748,616. And those numbers, I'll tie those back. All the districts were the same except for congressional district number 3. It had 748,615. With congressional redistricting, you have to get within one whole body. So 7 districts had the 616. The 3rd district had the 615, one less. The current map, the congressional districts are represented currently by 6 members of the Republican Party, 2 by the Democrat Party. In 2010, there was Voter Rights Act district. There was 1, and that was CD1, Congressional District 1. So that's what we currently are operating under. That's the map that's enacted today. That's what we've run all our elections on since 2011. So the committee goes about creating a map. What do you have to do to create this map, to create this bill? 1, you have to comply with Voter Rights Act. Equal population, which I just said, within one whole body. The House, State, and the House Senate State Senate and State House maps, there's a variance. On the congressional maps, it's one whole person. They should be compact and contiguous. They should be nice, neat little boxes, squares, rectangles, what have you. Communities of interest and district cores should remain intact. My objective when we started this as a committee was 1, to be constitutional and to comply with the requirements above, meaning Voters' Rights Act, equal population, compact, contiguous, and communities of interest and core districts remaining intact. So now we know what we want to do. We got to find out the data that is given to us by the census. We are bound to use the data that was delivered to us by the census. We have no other choice other than to use the data by the census. We may like the data by the census, we may not. We do not have a choice. We must use that data from the census. Back early in mid-2012, 21, the apportionment came out, and they take the United States population divided by 435, the members of Congress, and you do the math backwards, we were apportioned 8 members of Congress, which is good. We didn't lose any, we didn't gain any, we stayed the same. Now let's talk about, so we got 8. What are those 8 going to look like? What we do know from the census data is our state population grew to 6.154913 million. So we grew by 165,000 people. And you divide those out, each congressional district now had to grow by 20,748 people. Every district had to grow over the population of 2011 by 20,748. But what we also found out during the census was that some districts grew, some districts shrank. And there's a situation here, the 1st and the 8th, the 1st Congressional District and the 8th Congressional District lost 50,000 people each. And you add the 20,000 on top of it, the districts had to grow, you see the situation we have. The 7th Congressional District grew considerably, so it had to shed some people. So going into this, we had a situation where the 1st needed more people, the 8th needed more people, and the 7th needed less people. And that's what we started with. What I would do here is tell you that I would ask that I yield my time back, and I would ask that the chair or speaker recognize the ranking member of the committee.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request to speak from a mic other than my own during this debate.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would like to allocate about, I don't think I need more than about 3 minutes to do this.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, and most of all to the general public. Over the last 11 months and 12 committee meetings, we debated the districts of the state of Missouri. And I agree with everything the the chair from Jefferson 113th district said. We had some serious debates during these 11 months and 12 meetings. I would like to say that thanks for giving me this opportunity to serve the state of Missouri. I've been thinking real small from the beginning. I was thinking about just my district. But since I've been on this committee, I see what the whole state of Missouri looked like by debating these congressional districts. And here today, you will see the final product. And that doesn't mean that we all agreed in these meetings. As he said, it came out of the committee 8-3, and it came out of the other committee 8-4, I do believe. So as the debate today go along, you will see the positions that we took and the chair took. And so, but I'd just like to say that it was a healthy debate, and today should be a healthy debate. And at the end, we'll see how the citizens of Missouri get served by this committee. And I yield back the rest of my time.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield myself 7 minutes to explain the bill.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative, for your kind words from the ranking position. House Bill 2117, or better known as House Committee Substitute for 2117, is a map that we set out to build based on the census data that we had. Get my paper right here. We we had to comply with the Voter Rights Act. Thus, we made sure that Congressional District 1 still complied with the VRA. Equal population, we also knew that Congressional Districts 1 and 8 lost population. 7 and 3 gained population, so we had to balance those. We want to make sure district cores and communities of interest remained intact and compact and contiguous. So 2117, House Committee Substitute for House Bill 2117. When we drew it, we had a couple things you need to understand. County splits. The rule of thumb is that you have no more county splits than congressional districts, or no more splits than congressional districts. In House Committee Substitute for 2117, there was 8 splits. I'm sorry. I'm messing up here. I apologize. These new glasses, someone was talking about glasses in committee the other day. I got new glasses too. So there was 8 splits of the map in 2011. In this map, there's 7. 7 times counties are split. And those counties that the splits take place in Camden, Clay, Jackson, Ray, no, not Ray anymore, St. Charles, St. Louis, and Taney. So that's the county splits. Voting district splits. In 2011, we had 54 voting districts that were split. 11 of those districts had 0 population. And how do you say does a district have no population? Is that voting district, no one was living in that voting district at the time. Under this bill, there's 47 of them, 12 of them. So what we've done is we've reduced the county splits. We've also reduced the voting district splits. As we go through this map, I can tell you that we did have a committee substitute. We listened to the committee testimony, and we moved Ray, Carroll, and Sheridan into the 6th and in place of Jackson. That's how the committee substitute came about, and we unsplit the city of Richmond. And that was basically all the testimony we heard in committee, and that went very well. If you go to the 1st congressional district, it lost 50,000. It had to grow by 20 per state population, so we had to find 70. So we used the communities of interest, and that's how we drew 1st congressional district. Let's see. The other change from this was, as I just said, the House Committee substitute on 4 and 6 traded Ray, Carroll, and Sheridan for part of Jackson. And that is pretty much the map. The county splits. The one other thing was that the 8th congressional district picked up Pulaski County, which had Fort Leonard Wood. That was another major change with the map over what's currently in existence. And rather than me anticipate the questions may come, I will basically answer any questions. If not, I would certainly move for a motion to adopt.
Further discussion. Lady from St. Louis County. My apologies, lady. Gentleman from Jackson.
I'd like the lady from St. Louis County, 4 minutes.
Lady from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to the ranking member, and thank you to inquire of the bill handler, please.
Gentleman from Jefferson, do you yield?
I do.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you to your committee for all of their work. Thank you to the ranking member for allowing me this moment to question. And I appreciate you explaining, just for the public's edification especially, what the House Committee substitute was. To further their just edification and for ours, since we have to vote on it, I have a question as to the reducing voting district splits. I think mine was one of them because currently I have congressional districts 1 and 2 in the 73rd district, and it appears from the map that we have the current 73rd district will all be in what is now, or what is proposed to be 1.
Okay.
With that said,
Mine's out of 2 districts, almost 3 districts as well. So I think we're in agreement there. That's a better thing. So I
yes.
appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. Would that be congruent, or are we intending for that to be congruent with the new, as you know, we don't have the current House districts as of yet?
This body has nothing to do with the House or Senate districts, and we've been very independent of that.
Sure.
Somebody asked me the other day, and I said, I haven't even seen those maps. I don't want to see them until this process is over because they are to operate independently.
Absolutely, and just for, again, the public certification, we, in Missouri, we don't get to draw the districts that we may potentially run in, and I do think that our state has that part right. I guess my curiosity just going forward so that the public could be aware is because we don't have anything to do in this body with drawing the House and Senate, the State House and Senate maps, whereas it is our intent now not to split House and Senate or House districts within congressional districts. That may not necessarily be the case after whatever process takes place for drawing the new House districts.
Correct. The commissions operate independently from us, and it's very specific that we don't have any communication with them, and we haven't. And I feel good about what we've done. Now, you know, I'm sure we'll all have opinions on them as they do on us, and at the end of the day, we'll come to our own conclusions and go forward.
And we do agree, gentlemen, on trying to make sure that voters are enfranchised in the way that they have not multiple people to go to for different congressional district needs or different needs. So I definitely appreciate your attempt and your committee's attempt to ensure that, or to try to have us all in as few districts as possible, kind of a one-stop shop for democracy. So I definitely appreciate the attempt and the inquiry.
And on the one part, you know, we gloss over the communities of interest and core districts staying together. And that's, to your point, making sure people understand where they're voting, how they're voting, and trying to keep it as consistent as possible with being reflective of the population shifts.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again for all your work, your committee's work. I appreciate the inquiry.
Thank you, lady.
You're welcome.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 1 minute.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Mr. Speaker, this is an important once-in-a-decade task that we have been undertaking. This bill does not adequately protect the interests of all Missourians. This bill is not a fair number of adjustments that are required to allocate the numbers to the district. For example, you have CD1 needed 54,000 and CD8 needed 50,000. The other 6 congressional districts all gain population. And therefore, I don't think that the drawing of this map is adequate and represent the protection for this Missouri residents. Thank you. I yield back.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to allocate 5 minutes to the gentleman from St. Charles County.
Gentleman from St. Charles County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I offer an amendment ending in .04H. It is on page 12 of your packet, and I move for its adoption.
Gentlemen, state your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, I believe that this amendment violates the apportionment rule, and not all of the districts actually have equal population. There are 2 up by 1, 2 down by 1, I believe. Might be 1 more than that, and that is prohibited by our rules. And we specifically authorized in our resolution for today that points of order on that basis would be in order. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on the point of order. Gentleman from St. Charles County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've worked diligently with our outstanding staff here to ensure that all of those rules, including apportionment, were abided by. Worked not only with Jason and our amazing team here in the House, worked with the Senate. So I would request that the body vote down this point of order, and we can actually debate this as other states, Democrat states like Illinois, Oregon, California, Republican states like Florida, Tennessee, and others have done. So with that, I rest my case.
Further discussion on the point of order. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the point of order.
Proceed.
So my understanding is that we have to come down to a whole body. That's one person. As we look through the gentleman's amendment, we find that there are 2 extra bodies in 2 districts and 2 districts with a -1. And frankly, that's like getting pulled over by the police and saying, I'm sorry, officer, I'm just 0.01 over, let me go with this. You need to rule against this. Thank you.
The point of order will be taken under advisement. Gentleman from St. Charles County, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, as I mentioned, there is a trend going on in this nation. There are many things that we thought were held sacred that we would not be debating on a national basis. Removing the filibuster, removing the Hyde Amendment, requiring employers to pay for abortions, adding states to our nation just to earn more congressional representation in D.C., stacking the Supreme Court. And even though the people here in the state of Missouri elected to vote for voter ID, now we have individuals in D.C. wanting to federalize our elections. We are at a tipping point where we must ensure that our Missouri values, our American values, are upheld. And as the chairman indicated, every 10 years we redraw districts. And I do want to thank the chairman, the ranking member, the staff here in the House, the staff in the Senate, are working so hard these past several months to do something they've never done before, and that's digging into redistricting. In looking at these trends that I mentioned previously, you know, as the federal courts have indicated, there is some sort of allowance for the parties in power to draw maps a certain way. That's why we're seeing Illinois, California, Oregon, I'll just name 3, where even though population was lost, they're redrawing their maps to ensure that Republican representation is lost. Then we can take 3 other states, 3 Republican states, Texas, Florida, Tennessee. Those are states that are doing the opposite, making sure that they believe that Republicans elected them to ensure that more constitutional conservatives were being put forth in these districts. Now, I know it was mentioned earlier today that Ohio redrew their districts, and it went through state court. Now, there is a state prohibition on certain gerrymandering aspects. That got voted back, and they're redrawing those districts. But here, with the population shifts, we are presenting a map that not only keeps one community of interest near and dear to me in St. Charles County, which is the fastest growing county in terms of population, the fastest growing county in terms of economic development, and it is a Republican stronghold for the state of Missouri. We have been split. Mr. Speaker, I know in your county, you've been in 3 different districts. The gentleman from the Sander district pointed out today that in Lone Jack, in the Kansas City area, it has been divided into 3 different areas. So with this map, Mr. Speaker, as I stated, we are trying to save this republic. We are trying to ensure that the representatives that we are putting forth with these boundaries are representing the core values of the people here in the state of Missouri. We are trying to keep most of these communities of interest wholly intact, abiding by the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and our own state laws. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'd be open to answering any questions.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the lady from Montauk.
Lady from Montauk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the gentleman's amendment.
Proceed.
Thank you. You know, as we consider the gentleman's amendment and the points that he brings up, you know, at this point in time in our country, and I'm as I'm out throughout our state and listening to the people of my district, they want to make sure that we are putting forth individuals that we're sending we're redrawing these districts in a way that is going to send and speak the voice of our state and send that to Washington, D.C. Like the gentleman said, I mean, America is under attack in Washington, D.C. by radicals that just wanted to completely destroy our country. They want to disarm and topple, burn and trample and overthrow the very principles of liberty and the rights that are given to us by God, and it's our solemn duty to uphold those with all of our might. They want government to be our God and to dictate every single area of our life, but that's not how the people of Missouri believe. And so I believe that it is incredibly important that we make no mistake and that we must not fail to do everything within our power to stand up and fight for the liberties and freedoms that so many men and women in battle shed their blood to secure and defend and protect as a sacrifice for future generations. And if we don't stand now to be able to be a loud voice for the people of our district, when do we stand? And I think it's moments like this that define us and that separate the wheat from the chaff and the patriots from the politicians. With those words, I'm going to say for those reasons that I do strongly support the gentleman's amendment, and if I can get 5 members standing, I ask for a roll call vote. Thank you.
Lady, you have 5 members standing. You will get your roll call vote. Further discussion. Gentleman from Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from St. Louis City, District 80.
My apologies, gentlemen. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Apologies for the confusion. We're using the same mic back here. Thank you. So, I've kind of stayed out of the redistricting conversation as much as I could for the last few months because I think there's something fundamentally wrong with our system. Our system where partisan politicians draw the maps that we then run in. Now, it is the system we've got. It's what we have to do now. So I realize we're here today to do our jobs and draw a map. But I think this amendment and this proposed map really highlights the problems we've got here. We just heard about radicalists trampling our democracy. Our democracy. When I think about radicalists trampling our democracy, I think of people trying to invalidate a national election. I think of people trying to rig the rules of the game to make sure that their party and their worldview stay in power, even when they don't have a majority. And a map like this is specifically designed for that purpose, openly so, to say we're going to take a state where consistently over 40% of the population, in some years over 50% of the population, vote for one party. We're going to make sure that that party has the least chance of representation at the national level. We want to intentionally draw a map that will try to make sure that that party only gets 1 out of 8 districts in the next election. Openly, overtly gerrymandering the map to favor, to an extreme, in a radical way, our representation at this state level. Now, look, I know the gentleman that is carrying this amendment is, I guess, an attorney, but our laws are pretty straightforward on this. We're not allowed to deviate from equal population. We've already talked about that. I know the gentleman thought that we would vote on that point of order, but I think that actually the rules state that that will be ruled on based on the rules. So I hope that we will get to that soon here. But this is also, these districts are not as compact as possible, which is now in our Constitution, based on the language that most of the folks in this room put in the Constitution when they didn't like a fairer approach to map drawing. But this doesn't respect that. This doesn't keep the district cores intact in CD2, 3, and 5. It intentionally splits up communities that the amendment sponsor doesn't agree with into multiple districts to intentionally weaken their representation and power. splitting Boone and Columbia into 3 districts, splitting Jackson into 2, intentionally to try and make sure that the folks there don't get a representative of their choosing. Who are the radicals trying to destroy our democracy?
Gentlemen, I'm sorry, your time has expired. Further discussion. Gentleman from Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, I allocate 1 minute to the gentleman from St. Louis County, District 72.
Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the amendment.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Mr. Speaker, I'm a patriotic American. One thing I got to say about this country is our system of government is based on conflict. We don't all agree all the time. And that's okay, because we're all faithful to the Constitution, at least I want to believe we are, and we're faithful to our system of democracy. You know, I live in a state where we should have a 5-3 apportionment by party allocation in this state, and that's not necessarily possible with keeping true with all the lines. And my hat is off to the gentleman who has run this committee over this time and heard testimony and fought with people from his caucus and my caucus and everybody else to draw a map that's quasi-fair. I have some problems with it here and there. But I got to say, Mr. Speaker, this presentation on this amendment is wholly un-American. This looks like something you would do in Red China, where we are all alleged to one party, and if you don't like it, get out. That's frankly the case of, we hear other states being drawn into this debate where Democrats have...
Gentlemen, I'm sorry, your time has expired. Further discussion. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Yes, I would like to allocate 2 minutes to the lady from Barton.
Lady from Barton.
To speak on the amendment.
Proceed, lady.
I'm from rural Missouri, Barton County. I was elected to represent my district, rural Missouri. And I cannot sit at my desk and allow this to go on without saying something. So as we accomplished Clean Missouri, and as we fought against Clean Missouri, it was because of things like this. Right now, the way this amendment is written, it puts rural Missouri, Barton County, Vernon County, Cedar County, Dade County, small rural areas with Kansas City, Jackson County. We're not the same. We have different views. So I will be a no on this amendment just because of that. I yield the rest of my time.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jackson.
I yield 1 minute to myself.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Mr. Speaker, as I said in the opening, that this amendment that creates 7 districts, 7 safe districts for Republicans, does not represent the citizens of the state of Missouri. And that is what we're here to do today, is to draw congressional districts that represent the citizens of Missouri. And over the past decade, it's been a 57-40 split at the voting poll. That equals 5-3 congressional district. This is a 6-2 congressional map, but he wants a 7-1, and which I'm going to ask the body to follow my lead and vote this bill, vote this amendment down. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The House will stand at ease till 1:20 this day. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I note an absence of a quorum.
The gentleman from St. Louis County has noted an absence of a quorum. All those in favor will vote yes. All those opposed vote no. Ms. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Has everyone voted? Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 55 yes, 2 no, and 85 present, you have established a quorum. The amendments district involve populations that are off by more than one person. The gentleman's point of order is well taken. Please send the amendment back. Further discussion. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from St. Charles Hicks District.
Gentleman from St. Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an amendment ending in .0H. It has been distributed, and I ask for its adoption.
The gentleman from St. Charles County has moved for the adoption of House Amendment 2. Gentleman from St. Charles County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you can see here, I have offered a map just about like everybody else I think is wanted. We have a 7-1 map here. And I think it's very important today that I bring this up. I put it forth to the body so that we can discuss this issue. As we know, walking up and down the hallways in caucus and even in your own offices, phone calls on the other side of the building and right outside the walls right now, there are people discussing the 7-1 map, 6-2 map. There's arguments going left and right. I don't want to call it by numbers. I think this is something we should just bring up, discuss with the body, let the body determine what we want to do, talk about it on both sides of the aisle. This has to be a fair issue, and that's why I'm standing before you today with the legislation. I will open myself up to any questions.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 4 minutes to the lady from St. Louis County, District 73.
Lady from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To inquire of the amendment maker, please.
Gentleman from St. Charles County, do you yield?
I do, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Proceed.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, and Happy New Year. Quick question. I recall seeing a letter being circulated about your desire to keep St. Charles intact, contained within one district. Your map does that.
Yes, ma'am.
But it splits Jackson.
I did sign that letter, too, that you are speaking
I did see that. I'm not necessarily opposed to St. Charles staying together. As I understand it is between 408 and 410. And to the other gentleman from St. Charles's point, if we are talking about one whole person, that may be a little touchy, but still, though, that's enough to fit within one congressional district, given that there's about 769-ish per congressional district. But I do question why you split Jackson after signing a letter saying that you wanted for St. Charles County to stay together. What makes, for example, the gentlemen and ladies from Jackson, their desires to keep their community or their counties together or as together as possible for the good of the people in that county, not necessarily for political sake? What makes your desires or makes you more important than them?
Well, actually, that's the reason I did it. For one, we had to do a little bit of a change on the maps here. But the main reason I did that is the arguments that I've heard going on. One map not being liked over the other. So I'm trying to, me personally, if the body knows me, everyone in this building knows, and I'm going to try to find us a middle ground somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that's why I've done this, so we can bring this to the table. And I'm glad you're speaking on this because I do not know the reasons for or against. This has all been hush-hush to a lot of us. I mean,
absolutely. We were just talking about shenanigans and chicanery while we were on recess, and I think splitting Jackson when we have made arguments and very valid ones. I, as a person knowing that I was coming in here to vote on these maps, that's one of two of our major constitutional duties this year is to pass a budget and to vote on these maps. And one thing that I heard a lot of from a lot of different folks around the state is their desire to keep either their municipalities or their counties together, try to keep a school. They wanted some kind of cohesion, and what I'm a little jaded by, and it's regardless of partisan politics, is when we start doing things that's for, and everybody knows my meltdown last year, when we start doing things for one area that say that's good for one area and we do something different somewhere else. Partisan politics for me isn't enough to do that, whereas we can pass all different types of legislation up in here for us to disparage the voters. And I don't live in Jackson, I'm the lady from St. Louis County, but to say that the voters in St. Charles County deserve to stay together because they chose to live in that county for whatever reason, and to go and split up Jackson and to split up Columbia and other places in 2 and 3 districts when they can certainly go in 1 isn't just a slight to me as a state representative, but to those people, those 760 some odd thousand people in those counties that we are splitting up and forcing to have to go to different places. These districts are going to outlive our tenure in this body. So I would urge everyone, and I'm, you know, we're friends, to vote no on this amendment. If it is good for St. Louis County, although we're going to be split because there's 1 million of us, but if it's good for anywhere else that can go as a whole in a county, in a congressional district, we should do that as frequently as possible. Beat me at the ballot box, but don't do it like this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, lady.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jefferson.
I'd like to yield 5 minutes to the lady from Montauk.
Lady from Montauk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the amendment.
Proceed.
Thank you. Similar reasons as why I was speaking in support of the previous amendment. I think it's incredibly important, and after listening to the citizens in my district, that we send constitutional conservatives to Washington, D.C., and this map gives us a better chance of standing up for the voice of Missourians. And if I can get 5 members standing, I ask for a roll call vote, and I stand in support of the gentleman's amendment.
Lady, you have 5 members standing. You'll have your roll call vote. Further discussion. Gentleman from Jackson.
I yield 1 minute to myself.
Proceed.
I want to inquire the amendment maker.
Gentleman from St. Charles County, do you yield?
I do, Mr.
Proceed.
Speaker.
And I may not have been paying too much attention, but what was the criteria that you took into consideration into drawing this map?
Pretty much the main criteria I took on this is just trying to come up with a little bit more of a level playing field after hearing a lot of the arguments from one side to the other, from not just sides like this. I'm just talking, anybody that I'm speaking with on the maps.
Okay. So did you
Is this a dart being thrown at a wall in a way? I think every one of the amendments that we've thrown out here is yes.
Just a dart. And you hadn't been to no training or nothing about drawing these types of maps or making sure they fit the mustard when they go to court?
Honestly, the only training I have in this is I actually was coming into the office at the time when district maps were being drawn for my own self, and I entered the legislature in the 107th district, which was a new district at that time. So that's about as far as that goes. And everything we have learned here in the body, gentlemen.
Right. And communities should stay together if they could, if they can, right?
Well, as you know, I would like to see St. Charles all stay together so you can understand where I am on things.
And you would think rural versus urban would like to stay together. I just heard some young lady stand up and talk.
Sorry, gentlemen, your time has expired. Gentleman from Jackson.
I yield 30 more seconds, Mr. Speaker.
How about a minute, gentlemen?
You got it.
Proceed.
Thank you. Okay, yes, where was I at? Okay, communities of interest, right. And so rural versus urban, did you take that in consideration?
In some cases, yes. I mean, I already know, and looking at the map too, even looking at it now, I can see where there's going to be some difficulties in some of the areas here. But once again, like I said, I'm sure you have your own idea on a map as well, correct?
Did you take the voting over the last 10 years in consideration? That is something like 57 versus 40.
Have I taken a vote in what?
The voting at the polls, 57 Republican, 40 Democrat.
I understand how that works, yes.
Did you take that in consideration?
No, I didn't take the current voting establishments into consideration because I've seen census reports. I know how much it's changed. That's one reason we're sitting here 10 years later is population growth and everything. District lines change and so do our populations. St. Charles is a perfect example. And that's one of the worries that we have on the maps about St. Charles is because of the size it's growing into. I mean, St. Charles is growing very fast, as you know, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jefferson.
I'd like to yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Newton.
Gentleman from Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To inquire of the gentleman from Jefferson.
Gentleman from Jefferson, do you yield?
I do.
Proceed.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
It is.
What a process, right?
It's all about the process, yes.
Been working on this a long time. I have a couple questions regarding this amendment, this map. Have you had a close look at this when it comes to the number of splits?
Yes.
On this map? Can you? I mean, it's kind of hard to tell on my little paper here.
It is.
As to how those break out, but.
So we were able to pull a report on it, and what we found is that there's, remember, you're supposed to stay under 8. One county split for each congressional district. That's the recommended. There's 7 counties that are split. However, there's 10 splits within the map, and I'll go over those. Boone is split once between the 4th and 5th. That's your first one. Camden is split between the 5th and the 3rd. That's your second split. Your third split is between the 5th and the 8th in Camden. Your fourth split is in Jackson between the 4th and the 6th. And then also in Jackson again between the 6th and the 7th. That's your 5th split. St. Charles is split. That would be your 6th. St. Louis is split. That's your 7th. Stone is split. That's your 8th. And then Taney is split between the 5th and the 7th for your 9th, and your 10th split would be between the 7th and 8th district. So that gives you 10 splits within 0.08H, Amendment 2.
Okay, so how does that compare to the current map that we have now?
The current
when
map
it comes to splits?
That's enacted, or the one that is the underlying bill?
Not that we're debating, but the current map, and then also the one that we are debating. And the reason why those differences are there, I think, is important to point out.
Well, the current map that we're operating off, the one that was enacted in 2011, had 9 times that it was split. And the underlying bill, House Committee Substitute 2117, is at 8 splits.
Okay, so that was something that we in the committee tried to do, is to make it better when it came to splits, if at all possible. I know it's not possible to have 0, but we want to reduce the number of splits if possible. And I recognize that sometimes to keep communities of interest together, you have to have a split.
Right.
But I think
on this map, there's 3 counties that are split 3 ways.
Okay, so that helps me get a better understanding as to how that is playing out in the map and making sure that we're careful to keep communities of interest intact. So thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your inquiry.
Thank you.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jackson.
I want to yield 2 minutes to the lady from St. Louis City out of the 79th District.
Lady from St. Louis City.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the amendment.
Proceed.
First off, gentlemen, this amendment has 29 voting district splits, which is at this precinct level. So how do you expect those people to understand where they're going to go vote? If you have somebody right across the street, they're going to have to go vote in a different precinct than they originally voted. So this is extremely difficult for Jackson County, for Boone County, for St. Louis County, for St. Louis City, and all of the other places. So I don't think that we should do that, and we as the committee, the redistricting committee, work diligently to make sure that we try to keep communities together and not split them, especially in the voting district area. So I just wanted to point that out as well, because you do have that problem in this map, and I would hope that the committee and the body would vote it down. Thank you.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from McDonald.
Gentleman from McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the bill.
Proceed.
Or the amendment, excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, and I, I'm just studying this map like a lot of others in detail. Didn't necessarily know we were going to it, but I do feel compelled, and I'm conflicted. I know there's been some concerns raised. I'm trying to understand those and see where, I come down on those or the merits of the discussion. But I would be remiss if I didn't speak on behalf of my constituents in McDonald, and I feel even in Newton County. I'm not speaking for anybody else, but I do feel like for many of my constituents, we've long sought an I-49 corridor district, and I feel as though In many ways, I have much more in common with my colleagues to my north, agricultural base, than I do with, say, the city of Springfield, which is currently the 7th Congressional District. Arkansas, in their redistricting process, primary area of concern was keeping their I-49 corridor district together, which I understand they did. And so I'm trying to understand all the arguments as it relates to this discussion, but I do feel, for my constituents, I want to speak for them. And I think, whether it be this cycle or next cycle, an I-49 corridor district is something that we ought to really look seriously at. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from St. Louis City, 80th District.
Gentleman from St. Louis City.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I inquire of the amendment maker?
Gentleman from St. Charles County, do you yield?
Yes, I'm sorry, I do. Yes.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen. Hey, so I'm just looking at your map, and I want to understand here. So, first of all, did you say that you called this a 7-1 map right at the beginning? Are you trying to draw a map that has 7 strongly leaning Republican districts and 1 strongly leaning Democratic district?
I'm not necessarily strong one way or the other. Like I mentioned earlier, as far as the movement goes, I mean, we're already strong in the Republican side of things. When I looked at the map, and I'm just being honest with you, when I looked at the map, I already saw it as strong Republican areas, to be honest with you. I wasn't trying to make one stronger than the other. I think the Republican Party in this state is pretty strong, even in the map that I have.
You called it a 7-1 map, so that seemed like that was part of the purpose here, and I wanted to understand if that was actually the case, that's part of the purpose.
Well, like I said here, we're calling them 7-1, 6-2s, 8-0s. I even saw one, I think that someone toying around with a 10-0. That's just what we're being labeled as, but like I said in the beginning, I don't want to call them a 7-1, a 6-2, or anything like that.
And look, I agree that if a map was 10 points favoring ours in the last election, that may well actually move our direction for Democrats in the future. We might end up with 4-4 map out of this or something. So I get that. I just don't like the motivation behind that.
That's
but then
understandable,
the other question I wanted to ask, just so I understand correctly, Jackson split into 3 districts?
I was just speaking with someone
so
on that.
St. Charles, you decided you wanted to keep whole because St. Charles reps want to keep it whole, but you divided Jackson in 3. I get that. But so we might have a situation where folks in McDonald and Stone, on the far corner, southern corner of the state, might be represented by someone from downtown Kansas City. We might have the people from Atchison and Mercer on the far north, on the western side of the state, being represented by someone from downtown Kansas City. And we might have the folks from Clark on the northeast, far corner northeast of the state, also being represented by someone in downtown Kansas City. Is that actually possible under this map?
It looks like it would be possible in this map. And like I said before, gentlemen, though, there's going to be more than one area like this in all these maps we do. Is it perfect? I don't think we're going to find the perfect piece that we're all going to agree on. I'm trying to find a middle ground here. I understand there may be some differences here and there, and I appreciate
it. I just wanted to clarify those things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jefferson.
I'd like to yield myself five minutes and inquire the gentleman from St. Charles.
Gentleman from St. Charles County, do you yield?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I do.
Proceed.
How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, sir. We're here doing the people's work the way we're supposed to.
It is, and it's quite a challenge to draw these maps, isn't it?
Well, I will admit one thing. It hasn't been that challenging for me as a legislator, but the people behind the scenes are the ones we should be thanking.
Right, and you've probably got no calls about this at all, have you?
You show me someone that hasn't.
Right. So let's go through your map because, and I'm just going to walk you through it. And what I did notice is that it does have more splits than what we had before. It does have 3 counties that are split 3 ways, a total of 10 splits. They cover 7 counties. But the first thing I look at on this, and the gentleman mentioned the I-49 corridor, I understand that. What I have a hard time with is communities of interest. I don't understand how Jackson and Branson really mix. But when you're drawing the map, that's one of the things, not everybody gets what they want. And sometimes, I know the one gentleman was talking about how he can 5 minutes be in one district, 5 in another. Well, 3 minutes from my house, I can be in 3 different congressional districts. Sometimes that's just how the map's drawn. Would you like this map better if downtown Kansas City The theater district there, we just saw it last night on TV. They showed the Kaufman Arts. I mean, I know that's arts, and so is Branson, but I'm not sure that's the same community of interest downtown Kansas City as Branson.
I doubt very seriously it is the same community interests.
Now, I know Kansas City has a trolley. St. Louis has a trolley too, but
I was going to say, that'd
Kansas
be like
City's trolley
St. Charles
works.
interest versus St. Louis interest.
Right. And I don't know, Branson may have a trolley. I don't know. But, do they? Free one. Columbia, let's talk about when we get into St. Louis. So the St. Louis area. The 2nd congressional district in this map is made up of St. Louis County, the balance of St. Louis County minus the 1st, all of Jefferson. But to make that balance, you had to go and grab some from Weldon Springs. But I thought we were trying to keep St. Charles whole.
Well, we've been discussing the Weldon Springs thing already. Thank you for bringing that one up.
Well, I'm trying to help. But that's one of the county splits again. So I applaud you on this map. I think it's a creative effort. But I think when we look at, and I could go down on all the reports that come out, the cutting edges, the perimeter, all these different factors that figure into the map. I can argue a lot of them, and I don't want to waste the body's time. I applaud you for your effort on this, but because of the splits, the number of splits, all the other things on the compactness and that, I'm going to have to vote no on this. I apologize. We've worked well together for 7 years now. Well, 5 because you took a couple years off, which I think I could probably take a couple years off after this stress from this. But I appreciate your work, but I'm going to let you know I'm going to be a no on this. So.
That's all right, gentlemen. Thank you very much. As everyone knows, this is a touchy situation anyway. Not going to please everybody.
Further discussion on House Amendment 1. Seeing none, gentleman from St. Charles County, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said again, this is a very touchy situation. We're all up in arms in one way or the other on it. Some of us aren't. Some of us are in agreeances. Some of them are sitting in the seat like you and I, where we don't have to worry about next year. We have to worry about the future of the state. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I close.
The gentleman from St. Charles County has renewed his motion for the adoption of House Amendment 2. A roll call has been requested. All those in favor vote yes. All those opposed vote no. Ms. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Has everyone voted? Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 23 yes, 120 no, you have failed to adopt House Amendment 2. Further discussion on House Committee Substitute House Bill 2117. Gentleman from Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, I award 5 minutes to the lady from Green.
Lady from Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to offer the motion ending in point 20H, please.
The lady from Green has moved for the adoption of House Amendment 3. Lady from Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am offering this amendment, and quite frankly, everyone, what this is we had wonderful committee members on the redistricting committee, and I want to give a huge shout out to them. Thank you so much for your work, as well as thank you to our staffer, Emily, and folks on the other side of the aisle. Everyone who worked on this committee spent months and months doing so, and I want to also give a shout out to the chairman of the redistricting committee for communicating with us and working with us and having a very transparent process with the hearings, and I just want to say a big thank you to that. For this amendment, Mr. Speaker, what I have done is essentially taken some amendments that you'll see later, but our representatives who served on the committee, I was fortunate enough to have one gentleman from Jackson County and then 2 from the St. Louis area, and you will see amendments that those individuals are filing. What I have done is taken those amendments, which will be CD1 and CD5, incorporated them into mine. And then there are some slight changes on CD2, essentially taking the bill sponsor's map and just picking up a few portions that are outside of what he's got, looking at West St. Louis County and St. Louis, because essentially what we're doing is looking at the rural populations of CD2 that are included in the gentleman's map. I'm taking those out and including West St. Louis County to really look at the constituencies that we're talking about, as has been discussed many times already on this House floor. With that, Mr. Speaker, I would like to inquire from the lady St. Louis City to discuss portions of my amendment, please.
The lady from St. Louis City, do you yield?
I do.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, lady.
Good afternoon, lady.
Once again, thank you for all your work on this committee. I know that you put a lot of energy into it. Is it fair to say that in your version, your portion of the amendment that we are talking about here, you essentially are looking at the communities of Kirkwood, Webster Groves, Maryland Heights, Bridgeton, and a few things based on population shift. Can you talk a little bit about what we're trying to do here?
Yes, so with this amendment, it would actually take out that Webster Groves, Rock Hill area and move the district more northwest where we can increase the minority population from what was proposed by the chairman. So the population increase is from the 59.1% to 60.19%. So this increases and makes this district CD1 a stronger VRA district than it was than what was proposed originally.
Wonderful. And so again, just for the body's edification, when we're talking about the criteria that we're looking at when trying to draw these maps, the Voting Rights Act is first and foremost, and then the other two were, if you could refresh our memory on that.
Compact and also contiguous, and this actually does that, but this also increases the African American population within the district from the 48.8 that was proposed to a 49.22. So now not only are we increasing minorities, we're also increasing the African American population, this being one of the only districts that is a voting rights district in the country. We don't have many of them, so this is allowing us to strengthen that, so in the next 10 years, we won't have to come back and fight harder for it.
Absolutely. Thank you, lady, so much for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, if I could also inquire of the gentleman from Jackson.
Gentleman from Jackson, from a microphone not your own today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So yes, in my amendment, I took portions of what you were trying to get done in committee, and hopefully again today on the floor, we'll have time to discuss with CD5. Can you talk a little bit about what we're trying to do with this?
Yeah, in CD5, there's what you call, I guess, a little loop that goes down to between I-70 and 50 Highway and 291 and 7 Highway. There's a little loop that goes off in there and it comes back out, and that's basically Lee Summit, which has been in that district, which has been in the 6th district for probably the past 2 or 3 decades. And so that's a community of interest that we was trying to stay with the 6th district if it was all possible. And so my amendment just brings that and put it back in the 6th district, and we move out a little to the west and up.
Wonderful. So when we're having this conversation around populations of interest, one of the key points for this, and I think we heard about it often in the public testimony, was keeping that constituent services continuity as well. And to your point, this area has been set like this for quite some time. The population shifts really haven't indicated that it needs to switch, correct?
Right. Shouldn't be switching. The little loop off in there, I call it a little loop, and it's right in the middle of the county, and it's pretty much takes up Lee Summit and some of Blue Springs. Those people has been used to the sixth district for at least the last 2 or 3 decades, and so we would like to keep those in the same community there. We don't want to have someone across the street is in one district, person across the street is in the other district. So I think this loop will satisfy that.
Fabulous.
And we can get it out.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, just to finish on my amendment, please. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So yes, what we're trying to do here is keep the continuity that we have had for CD5 and as well as wrapping up with CD1 to increase the VRA. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Further discussion? Seeing none, lady from Green, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I close.
The lady from Green has renewed her motion for the adoption of House Amendment 3. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. The noes have it. You have failed to adopt House Amendment 3. Further discussion on House Committee Substitute House Bill 2117. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Newton.
Gentleman from Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to speak briefly on the bill.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to say I appreciate the gentleman from Jefferson and the hard work that he has put in on this, as well as the committee and the staff, especially when it comes to all the work that has went into trying to come up with the best map that we can come up with that meets the requirements that are there for this situation. It's been quite the process and a learning process for me going through this, and really a humbling responsibility just to be a part of the process, knowing that this is something that not everybody gets to be a part of. And so for me, the constitutional requirements, of course, was priority in looking at this and trying to look at the data and the numbers that we are given, and then the extra challenges that we face this year with that getting that data late in the year. And so there's a lot of work that has went into this, and I appreciate those that were involved, and make sure that we have a product that is a fair map for the people of Missouri to be well represented according to the demographics and the population data that we received. So I'm in support of the bill and will vote yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion? Gentleman from Jackson.
I'm going to yield myself 15 minutes, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment ending in 21H, and I move for its adoption.
The gentleman from Jackson has moved for the adoption of House Amendment 4. Gentleman from Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, this amendment was in the lady from Greene County amendment, which was voted down. And this amendment, it brings out the dip that's currently in the middle of Jackson County. And the reason for that is to try to keep the communities of interest together. And what it would do is move pretty much Lee Summit, Blue Springs back into Congressional District 6 with a little maneuvering. Then we could keep this community whole. And if there's any questions, answer.
Discussion. Seeing none. Gentleman from Jackson, you are recognized to close.
Mr. Speaker, I close.
The gentleman from Jackson moves the adoption of House Amendment 4. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. All those opposed say no. The noes have it. You have failed to adopt House Amendment 4. Further discussion on House Committee Substitute House Bill 2117. Gentleman from Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to the lady from St. Louis City.
Lady from St. Louis City.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an amendment ending in .02H, and I move for its adoption.
The lady from St. Louis City has moved for the adoption of House Amendment 5. Lady from St. Louis City.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this amendment will do, as I explained a little bit earlier, it will increase the minority population. We're just simply in this one swapping out the Shrewsbury, Mulberry, which was those areas were not in whole, they were not intact, but what this does is tries to keep as many of those districts, voting districts as well as counties intact while also increasing the minority population. With that, Mr. Speaker, I'll take any questions.
Discussion on House Amendment 5. Seeing none. Lady from St. Louis City, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just so we're very clear of what we're doing here, we're voting on a district that has an impact and has been fought for generations. We just celebrated Martin Luther King's birthday yesterday, and yet this would accomplish everything that you all have quoted online. This will be an honor to his legacy. So if we're going to honor his legacy, let's do it by voting yes on this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I close.
The ladies from St. Louis City has moved to the adoption of House Amendment 5. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. The noes have it. You have failed to adopt House Amendment 5. Further discussion. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 5 minutes to the Vice Chair of the committee from Wright.
Lady from Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would just appreciate the conversation on the floor today. It's been an honor to serve on your committee, Mr. Speaker. I couldn't help but think that I have been privileged to serve the same people that my grandfather served many, many years ago, and also the same general area that my uncle served a handful of years ago, if he's listening. But the thing that struck me today is the very first, this bill resembles, Mr. Speaker, what I was reminded of in my first session by my first Mr. Speaker as a freshman in this body. I remember when he gave his last speech, I believe it was the gentleman from Butler, said that when we come on this floor, we lose our identity, and we are to represent the people that sent us here. And the chairman and the members of the committee have worked diligently together despite disagreements, despite very vigorous conversation, to make sure that this map fairly and adequately represents what we are tasked to do according to the Constitution and according to the geographic areas of the people that we represent. And it's a privilege and an honor to be part of this voting body here today. And thank you for the listening that you've done today and the conversation that has been had. And I'm looking forward to voting this bill out and sending it to the Senate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to myself.
Proceed.
I too, Mr. Speaker, want to thank you for allowing me to serve on this committee. And not only that, the young ladies from St. Louis City that served on this committee with me, I would just like to say thank you very much for indulging me and putting up with me at times. And so, and Dan was great to work with, even though we didn't see eye to eye all the time, but he was good to work with. I learned a lot. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, but the representative from the 113th District. We did work well together, and when we disagreed, we still walked out with a smile on our face. And I think that's what it's all about. I also like to thank some of the staff that worked with me. I guess I can say their name, Emily. She was great, stayed up during the night and worked on amendments and bills. And thank for this body for making me feel comfortable today, because I was nervous, but I do feel a little bit better that we're about to end this. And so thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jackson.
I would like to yield 3 minutes to the lady from St. Louis City.
Lady from St. Louis City.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too served on the committee, and I want to thank you for putting me there because I was able to learn the law on redistricting. I was also very thankful that we followed those laws and that we knew that any time that we had to discuss amongst each other, that we were open to understanding that when we talk about special interests, that did not mean the interests of any politicians. And when we discussed congressional districts, we didn't put names to them. We said CD1, CD2, CD3. So when it came down to looking at how we would set up the districts, it was never about, are we taking care of anyone? It was always about, what are we doing in the best interest of those who live in the state of Missouri? So I'm thankful that everyone on that committee followed that and that we did the best we could do, and thank you for allowing me to serve.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 1 minute to 2 minutes to the young lady from St. Louis City.
Lady from St. Louis City.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I probably won't even use all of those minutes, but I just wanted to give roses here today to Emily O'Laughlin, who did everything, and I think I said her name wrong, but Emily, we all know who Emily is. She deserves all the kudos, all the honors, all the praise today. The reason why we are here today and we are so eloquent on the floor and talking about these redistricting maps is because Emily did her due diligence to make sure we knew what was going on. So Emily, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to the committee. But I wish we could have done better by honoring our leaders and our heroes by adopting something that would have strengthened what they fought for, died for, and bled for. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Seeing none, gentleman from Jefferson, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I get started, before I forget anything, I'd like to have a roll call on this, if I could have 5 minutes standing.
Gentlemen, do you want it on the adoption or the perfection?
On the perfection. So I should probably wait for the perfection, right? Perfection, for the perfection.
Gentlemen, you have 5 members standing. You will have your roll call vote.
Thank you. To echo what the minority ranking member said, the House staff has been outstanding on this. I know some of them came in yesterday from the clerk's office and worked. We had the print shop stay late one night. Thank you very much. The Speaker, your team has been a great help. The committee members have been great. But if anybody thinks this was a simple bill, it was not. And I think the body should thank the staffer who did the lion's share of the work, and it's Brittany Logston. She's sitting up front. Thank you, Brittany, very much for the work you've done. With that, Mr. Speaker, I think this is a fair bill, a fair map, and with that, I close.
The gentleman from Jefferson has renewed his motion for the adoption of House Committee Substitute House Bill 2117. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. The ayes have it. You have adopted House Committee Substitute House Bill 2117. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion that House Committee Substitute House Bill be ordered, perfected, and printed.
The gentleman from Jefferson has renewed his motion that House Committee Substitute House Bill 2117 be ordered, perfected, and printed. A roll call has been requested. All those in favor vote yes. All those vote no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 84 yes, 60 no, you have perfected and printed House Committee Substitute House Bill 2117. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With no further business now coming before the body, we're going to move to announcements.
Announcements. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, your Special Committee on Criminal Justice will meet at 6 p.m. in hearing room 6.
Further announcements. Gentleman from Pulaski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Budget Subcommittee on Appropriations, Transportation, and Public Safety will meet tonight at 6 o'clock.
Further announcements. Gentleman from Jackson.
Love to have everybody at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning for the Bible Project in the House Alcove.
Further announcements. Gentleman from Cole.
Announcement, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
Your Committee on Veterans will meet at 5 o'clock this evening in hearing room 5.
Gentleman from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Elementary and Secondary Education will meet tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. in hearing room 1.
Lady from Bates.
Thank you. Announcement, please.
Proceed.
Your Committee on Pensions will meet in the morning in room 117 at 8:30, and the Joint Committee on Public Employee Retirement will meet at 9, also in room 117.
Further announcements. Lady from St. Louis County.
Announcement, please.
Proceed.
The Committee on Children and Families will meet at 9 a.m. at some room in the basement. Thank you.
Further announcements. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Utilities will be meeting at 9 o'clock tomorrow in hearing room 8. Thank you.
Further announcements. Seeing none. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Body. Mr. Speaker, I would like to remind the body that we have the State of the State tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock. But with no further business before the body now, at this moment, I now move that the House stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Wednesday, January the 19th, 2022.
The gentleman from St. Louis County has moved to the House stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Wednesday, January 19th, 2022. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The House is adjourned.